flow, okay, which are also available to you in order to create your own workflow. Okay, so when you create your own workflow, you can use this building block, which are ready to use. Okay, so for publish knowledge and retire knowledge both. So when you creating the knowledge article, you can define like which workflow will be used for which categories. So if you go to the knowledge administration and knowledge base, for example, if you search knowledge base article for IT categories, then you can say all IT category knowledge article should publish without approval or with approval. You can change the publish workflow name here. Now in our lab, it was earlier goes to the approval, but we change it to the instant publish. So now the IT knowledge base article will get published without any approval, right? We talked about that. You can create the new article by that new button. These are the fields which are there. And when you create the new article, knowledge base article, whatever you put it in a short description, and if this short description, the keyword which you use in a short description, if it is matching with the short description of a incident, the knowledge article will automatically start appearing in the related search result tab. We have seen it yesterday, correct?
Yes, I remember doing that.
Yes, so we have did that yesterday, and that's how is the knowledge management. In service catalog, we discuss the service catalog. What is service catalog? Service catalog is nothing but a repository of all the active services which are available for your customer to use. The customer can see all the services to which he is entitled. So not necessary that all the services is available to all the users, right? Certain services are available only for certain groups, certain locations. Okay. So for example, iPad ordering service is available only for marketing guys. So if you belongs to the marketing group, then only you'll be able to see that on the service catalog or service portal. If you log in as a marketing team person, you will be able to see that iPod ordering service there. If I log in as a HR group person, then, and if the iPad service is not in, I'm not entitled for that service, then I won't be able to see that in my service portal or service catalog portal, right? So once we create you can create the service catalog item. You can create the interface first, like how the user can order that item. But at the same time, we have to also provide in the backend how this service will get fulfilled. So yesterday we just talked about the front end, how to create the front end for any service, right? And we discussed this various item, like what is service catalog item, what is request, what is requested item, and what is task with this example. And service catalog, there are various table in the backend. We store this requested item and catalog task. We have talked about it. Then service catalog items and variables. So these variables are used to accept the input from the user when he ordered that service. So there are various type of variables like multiple choice, select box, single line text, reference, checkbox, like this. And we discuss it how to use this, right? So we discuss it with one example. If you are creating the service catalog for iPad, ordering of iPad, you can ask the question whether you want multiple choice question, for example, like what will be the memory size, 16 GB or 32 GB. You can also say like when the user select 16 GB or 32 GB, what value should get passed to the backend application to process this request. Similarly, you can also create the color variable, which is a kind of select box, and the default, you can also give the default value, right? And this is how the interface get created. And once you create the interface in the service catalog, next workflow item, we have defined how this service catalog, how this service will get configured. so that when somebody raises a request, how it will get processed. And here we talked about some workflow, some conditional workflow, right? And conditional work activities, sorry, not workflow, activities and conditional activity. So some activities are conditional means, I think we talked about it here, right? Workflow. So some activities you find two options. If it is approved, what to do. If it is rejected, what to do. But some activities are only one option, that is always. So this is the simple activity. These are conditional activities. So conditional activity have two options to go, where normal activities has only one option to go, correct? So we discussed all these things yesterday. And last part is SLA that we have just completed today, right? Any question, query, anything in any of the thing which we covered yesterday? Module 4, sorry, 3 and 4.
No, I think we covered pretty well.
Okay, good. So we can go to the next module now then. Let me close this. Module 4. Okay. Module 5. Okay, so here we'll talk about the three main lesson. One is policies and insertion. Second thing is application security. And the third one is notifications. So first we'll talk about the policies and interactions. What are the policies, action, business rule, and scripts? This is what we are going to cover here in the first lesson. So UI policies, data policies, UI action, business rule, and scripts all are basically a tool for developing certain kind of automation in your ServiceNow instance and application. So here you need to first understand what is the client and what is server. So client refer to an application or the system that access a remote service or another computer system known as server. You must be aware of what is client server technology, right?
Yeah, we've had to use it for school.
Yes. And server is the computer program running as a service, a physical computer dedicated to running one or more services, or system running and running a database, that is also called as server. So client means there are many users who are accessing the same application which is installed on the server. So these are what is client and what is server. Now basic architecture overview. So how it works. So generally our client means you are accessing it from the web client. You are sending the request over the network or internet to the server, application server. Then application server process that request. If it need any data from the database, it will take it from the database and it will send back the response over the internet back to the client. This is how it works. So this request plus response is considered as the round trip. So if I request something, the request will go to the application server. Application server may retrieve the required information from database and it will send it back to the same requester who raised that request. So that is called response, right? Now let's talk about this UI policy action, data policy, and UI action. The first, UI policy and UI policy action. So it will all happen on the client side. So here you can what is UI policy and UI action. If you want to make certain field read only on the form, you can do it with the help of UI policy and UI action. So UI policy often offer an alternative to the client script for dynamically changing the information on the form. So once you save the UI policy, a new UI policy action related list is displayed. So here it is a combination of two things. What is UI policy and what is UI action? Okay. So, and all these things is happening on the client side only. There is no server involvement here. So most of the time UI policy and UI actions are client side action, right? For example, if it asks you, oh, okay, for example, if there is a field called married flag, okay, whether your marital status is a field, and there are two options, married and married, or whatever other options are there. Okay, so when you select as a married, the another field will be displayed on the screen asking you the spouse name. Okay, if you select anything else other than married, the spouse name field will not be displayed. Now, do you think any this action can be done on the client fully?
Uh, I don't think so necessarily, no. Yeah.
We don't need to go to the server for this validation, right?
Oh yeah, so then yeah, okay.
Because see, the user will select the value in marital status, and I will say if the status is select the marital status, I will display, make the spouse name field visible. If he select any other value, the spouse name field will not be visible, or it will be hidden. So all these things can be done on client side itself. I don't want anything for any reason. I don't want to go to the server for this type of functionality. Correct. That is why it is saying it make everything on client. So if you have this kind of requirement, you can implement it with the help of UI policy or UI policy action. Data policy is it is basically involved both client and server side. So data policies enable you to enforce the data consistency by setting the mandatory and read only state on the field. For example, enforce the mandatory data on the form and on import. So here, when do you know that this field is being filled by the user or not? When you try to save the record, and if it is the value is blank, then the server will say this is the mandatory value, I cannot accept this record. So if this is the case, then you have to implement it with the help of data policy. So it is both client side and server side. And then last one is UI action, which is also client and server side. And example of it is make save button visible on the form for appropriate users. So save, I there is one record open. For example, if you want to see the employee record, okay, so you can have the view permission on that record, but I don't want you to make any changes on that record. So it will not show you the save button itself. So it will not allow you to save the record. So UI actions and button links and context menu items on the form and list, making the UI more interactive, customizable, and specific to the user activity. So here you will be UI action means it will UI action is trigger when you click on the button, and then something will happen in the backend that can be written. So this thing will be more clear when we talked about some examples here. Okay, so let's go there. Same sample policies, action, rules, and script. Now here you have something. UI policy can make the field read only on the form. So you can, by using UI policy, you can make certain field read only. You cannot make any changes into that field. So if you have a requirement that this field should be only read only visibility to the customer or user, then you can write a UI policy on that. Data policy can enforce the mandatory data on the forms. Data policy can enforce mandatory data on the import. So when you create the record, it will make sure that you have entered the value in that field. Then UI action can make the save button visible on the form for appropriate user. So save button is visible only some group, not all the users. So you can, if that is the requirement, you can do implement it with the help of UI action. Then there is another thing called business rule, can trigger confirmation mail go to the caller when incident is first submitted. Now, when you create the incident and when you submit it, the system should send the mail to the caller, means the person who is submitting this incident, that your incident number so and so is created in the system, and you can add some more information, but that confirmation mail you can send. And there is another part called client script. Can client script can prompt that incident has been successfully submitted. So when you submit the record and if everything is created properly, and when the record go to the server, it will stored successfully in the database, and database commit the transaction. Okay, then the system will come and show you the message that your incident is successfully submitted, like that. So here here you can see the various requirement, and by which uh, script or rule or business rule you can use to implement that requirement. Okay. So let's talk about the first part, UI policy first. So UI policy is a user interface. UI policy is a form administration tool, okay, and which run on the client side. Now we can use the UI policy to set the field on the form to optional or mandatory, visible or hidden, editable or read only. So by using UI policy, you can runtime, you can change the field property either optional to mandatory, okay, or visible to hidden. Now, optional to mandatory, how you can change it? For example, my requirement is if the person marital status is married, then only the spouse field will be visible or hidden. Sorry, will be visible, or it will other in the other case it will be hidden. So if that is a requirement, I can do it with the help of UI policy. Correct. Editable or read only. So based on the user who is login, I can decide whether the field will be visible, editable or read only. If the login user is from admin group, the field will be editable. If the login user is non-admin user or non-admin group, the field will be read only. So I'm giving the permission only admin to edit the data in that field. Okay. I can make certain field optional or mandatory based on certain condition by using UI policy. So for example, if you said like in the student application, so the field is, are you a graduate? Okay. If he say yes, then I will say the particular field like passing year is mandatory. If he said, if I completed my graduation, yes, then the passing year field will be mandatory. Or it is in, or if he say no, then it is not mandatory. You can keep it blank. Okay, making sense this scenario?
Yep, that's making sense.
Okay. Then UI action. So UI actions and UI okay. So UI actions means how the action will get triggered. The UI action can be triggered from the button, from the menu, from the link, or from the list button. So you can trigger the UI action and then take the actual action based on that. So the list choice. So when the user click on the button, the UI action will get triggered. When he select the menu from the list, the UI action can be triggered. When he click on the link, form link, the UI action can be triggered. Okay. So these are all UI actions which you can trigger, and every UI action you can specify the action or the what is to be done when the person click on the button, what should happen, that you can write in the UI action and UI rule. Business rule. Business rule is a piece of JavaScript configured to run when record is displayed, inserted, updated, deleted, or when table is queried. So business rules are all which are happen on the server side. So when the record is actually inserted or updated or deleted in the database, and the operation is confirmed by the database, then the business rule will trigger. Right. For example, if you want to create the log, if somebody delete the record, you want to create the log saying that who deleted the record at what time. So the moment somebody delete the record and that record get actually deleted from the database and the transaction is commit, the system will run a business rule and create another record in the table, that is log table. And what it will log the user who is login and the timestamp when the record was deleted and some part of that data. So this record is deleted by this user at this time, that you can create. Now business rules are generally used when you don't want anybody should bypass that. Okay, so business rule can be set to run before or after the database action has been occurred. So you can set, you in the business rule you can specify whether you want to run it before the database transaction happen or after the database transaction happened. So while configuring the business rule, that option is there. How the business rule will flow: user or the system send the query to the database, it will go to the query database, it will these are the rules which will get applied. Display rule, then for if you submit the before submit rule, and the database updated and after submit rule. So this is the sequence in which the rules are applied. So if there is a query rule, it will first get applied. If there is a display rule, it will get applied. If there is a before rule, means before the transaction get into database, if you want to do something, that rule will get executed. And if you want to do something after the record get inserted or updated, the after rule will be there. So you can decide when the business rule should get triggered. So you can, these are the 4 conditions. Okay, before, after, async and display, when the business rule will execute here. So this is bit development part. Okay, but we will just take you to the different scenario here. So the things will be more clear when we'll do the lab. So what I'm doing here now, I will show you some scenario and let's see how then it will help you to understand what we are doing actually. Let me share my complete screen with you so that you will be able to understand what I'm doing. Okay, so let's do one policies and interaction. Create, modify UI policy action and UI actions. So let's do that first. First, I want to open an incident. Okay, and I'm specifying and I'm just seeing what is the subcategory there. Okay, let's go incident create open. Sorry, incident create new. So this is the create new incident. Sorry, open here. So we'll open some incident instead of create new. We'll open the existing incident and then we'll see what is the subcategory field is showing there. Okay, let's open this first incident. You have category field, you have subcategory field here, correct? Now we'll create the UI policy. What is the UI policy I want to create? You have been asked to suppress the subcategory field when the category is inquiry or help. Okay, now even though the category is inquiry or help, subcategory field is always visible. Always visible. But my requirement is that when category field is inquiry or help, this field should be hidden. If the category field is anything other than inquiry or help, it should be visible. That is my requirement. Okay, clear what is the requirement is?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right now, subcategory field is always visible, but my requirement is the subcategory field should be visible only when category is inquiry or help. For any other value, it should be hidden. That is what my requirement is. Now let's see how we can implement this. Sorry. Okay, for that, what I will do now, you have been asked to suppress the suppress means hidden the subcategory field when the category is inquiry or help. So in this lab section, we will build the UI policy and UI policy action to hide the subcategory field when the category is inquiry or help. So for this, first we'll go to the form control menu on the incident header and select configure UI policy. So here I will go select configure UI policy. Configure UI policies. Clear? See where it is?
Yep, I can see that.
Yes. So go to the configure UI policies. Now UI policies are there. I will create the new policy. So I'll click on new. On which table I am doing it? On incident. Correct. So since I have come here from incident, the field will automatically get populated incident. Okay. Short description, hide subcategory when category is inquiry or help. So I will, it's not responding. Huh. Hide sub category when category is inquiry or help. Correct. This is my requirement. Hide subcategory field when category is inquiry or help. What is the condition? When it is apply? When to apply? When category is inquiry or help. Clear? I am talking about the UI policy now. My UI policy will trigger when the category field inquiry or help.
Yep, makes sense.
I will save it now. I have not defined yet what to do. Okay. I have not defined anything what to do after this condition met. I am just specifying when this condition, when the things will trigger, when the category is inquiry or help, this UI policy will get trigger. Okay. I have not yet specified that what should happen if the category is inquiry or help. That I will put it now. Let it get loaded. See, you have now created a UI policy and set the condition on which it will enforce. Next, we need to indicate which field to hide or what to do. Okay, we already add this. When to apply, we already specify. UI policy we have created, and is why it is not showing. Anyway, fine. Now next part is you have to specify UI action. This is UI policy we have created. Now we'll be specifying UI action. This is your UI action here. What is the UI action? You want to hide the subcategory field, correct?
Yes.
So that is what I was telling you. There are two parts here. One is UI policy, one is UI policy action. So first I have just specified UI policy, that is category is inquiry or help. What is UI action? I will create it now. New. Huh. Which field? It will show you all the field here. No, or why it takes some time maybe. Subcategory, right? So subcategory. Subcategory field. What I want to do, subcategory field.